Hi, I'm Cassidy Questorf. I am the executive director of the Plymouth Independent Film Festival, and with me today is Beryl, who is the creative mind behind Record Highs. Beryl, thank you so much for being with us today and being part of the Klamath Independent Film Festival.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So this animation is so unique and so, fun, I want to say, but
Yeah,
as you're watching the film, it feels well, maybe less fun and more just um
yeah,
all the feelings of
all
existential
of it.
dread and
Yes.
all of it. So what was kind of your creative process and decision making in making Frogs the animation and just
Yeah,
kind of the style and playing into the film itself?
yeah, definitely. So this film, it went through quite a journey. When I started, I was eager just to sort of sharpen my skills and make something that just had a clean beginning, middle, and end. I
Mm.
was doing, I was watching the Olympics. I was doing some sketches, and I just had these gymnastic frog characters. I had like three initial fun sketches and grew from there. And as I was working on it, it was initially just supposed to be a jump that failed. That comically goes into space because what would frogs do if they were to compete? Jump, and if they reach civilization, they'd get super high. But as I was working on it, things were happening around me that I couldn't. I wanted to put into not words, actually, specifically not words, images. Um, Notre Dame caught fire. Uh, the Amazon rainforest, the lungs of the world, was on fire. There's just fires everywhere. And I just kept noticing that this was such a profoundly private experience. Everybody knew what was happening. It was impossible to talk about it. When people did talk about it, it was with a series of slogans or some kind of fantasy about how to fix this problem, or the subject would be changed. So I kind of wanted to take what's useful in storytelling actually is if you have an incredibly simple structure and you map meaning on top of it, I can commit to just the frog competition part and then insert this meaning. And it turns out I was a fantastic tool. I could use, the frogs in boiling water metaphor, record highs, just things started really clicking into place. And it just became a way of sort of expressing not how to get out of this mess, but how it feels to be in it right now, kind of seeing this wave coming and sitting back down and knowing you're not probably going to do anything. It was something I've never seen. I've never seen this issue expressed in that particular way. And I've been told to do, I've been assigned making films for environmental causes before, and they almost always have slogans, a call to action, or some kind of like sort of tension diffusing joke or something. And I didn't want any of that. I wanted people to not know what they were seeing at first, almost as if they were flipping channels and were watching a sports broadcast, and then suddenly immediately recognize what they were actually watching and not be. Because if you see climate change, just the word, for example, people's eyes glaze over, they know what to expect already, they want to turn away. I just wanted this to surprise people.
Mhm.
And it looks like, based on reception so far, that it worked.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's funny because for me, I come to film because of climate change. I love science communications and I love sharing conservation stories, and that's totally like my background is science and everything. And so I had never seen someone do this in such a creative way and also just like absolutely showing what it feels like to like see all this stuff happening around you and like seeing people just distracted by whatever they're doing and you're all sitting in it together but alone. And so
Yeah,
it was just that perfect like I just like sat with that and it was really so I just want to commend you on that
thank
because
you.
it's such a unique and beautiful film.
Yeah.
And I I was so embarrassed that I didn't even like connect record highs with
Well, that's
like
the thing. There's so many different connections.
yeah.
It's been beautiful seeing so many people come back. Well, the thing was, if you make a film that has so much symbolism and no talking, it's very short, about cartoon animals. the worry is constantly, am I going to go over people's heads? Or since I'm thinking about record highs constantly, is this too on the nose? Is this too obvious? But like everybody always seems to get the main point, and then people are in pieces, especially with rewatches,
Mhm.
getting all sorts of different things from it. For example, if you watch the film twice, you can hear the boiling water in the first shot. Like if you know what to listen for, you know it's already there, and that you know, it was so cool to just see people come back. And oh, and there was actually somebody who mentioned uh, there apparently they thought there was like a meaning that I didn't even put in there. Someone was like, "Oh, this is based off of a Japanese short story or allegory about a frog in a well," and I'm like, "Sure,
Yeah.
that's a great. I wish I thought of that. That's a fantastic
Yeah. Oh, that's
idea."
amazing. Oh my gosh, like all these little Easter eggs that you're like, "Oh, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
totally." But yeah, that's so interesting, and the record highs and also, um, kind of one thing that I noticed on the second rewatch was the first frog jumper, like, when he
Mhm.
comes down, he has amazing stores, they have all 10s, 9s, but the look of, like, despair on the face, and you're like, "Oh, that's, like, kind of ominous, like, why is that frog so upset and stuff?" And then it all comes together, throughout the film and everything like that. So just the attention to detail in the film in itself is so, beautifully done, and yeah, I just found it really interesting. So it is interesting that other people are picking up on those tidbits too and everything. But
Mhm.
with the frogs, at first I was like, maybe it's because of the conservation background, but I was like, oh, amphibians, such an important species that are like, really like going away and underlooked and overrepresented. But sitting in boiling water, like that totally makes sense now too, and such
Yeah.
another great metaphor. Um,
Absolutely, it all fits.
it
Yeah.
all fits, exactly. But the reception to your film has been really well received from what I've seen. I mean, it has 76,000 views on YouTube.
Yeah.
What has
Way more
that
than I've ever gotten on a film
Yeah,
before. It's really exciting.
so exciting, so congratulations. So what has that been like kind of on the receiving end for everything?
Well, it was incredible because, well, I made this film during the pandemic, just something to do in some sense. I had no expectation that it would really get seen. I've done a couple films in the past, and they get maybe 1,000 views or 700 or whatever. And I just happened to finish. So I when you for those who don't know, if you make a film for film festivals, festivals often want to be the first people to show your work. So there's a period of 1 to 2 years where you don't put this thing online, you just
Mm,
submit it. So that time period of finishing it, having that festival time, and then posting it online, it just coincided perfectly with the beginning of the summer and a kind of random spike in uploads of mostly student 2D animated films. So it just like it caught the algorithm just in a really lucky time, and uh, it was just a massive explosion of uh, interest, and it was I don't know, it was so much more validating, I suppose, to just get people writing earnest comments of this film they didn't expect to see that day
mhm.
than hearing from random festivals I wouldn't be able to attend that like people you won't get to talk to might see this and might have some reaction, you know. So it's
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
Oh, absolutely. That's so interesting, so exciting. Um, I guess from like a personal standpoint, watching this film, you see this performer and they're performing and they're doing their act, and then they see what's happening around them, and then the landing for me is kind of like what really struck a chord. I feel like because they just fall flat
Mm,
on their face, and
yeah.
it feels kind of like being a professional, like, nowadays when you're expected to show up to work and do all this, and you're like, "Have you not seen, like, what's going on and stuff?"
Yeah.
So, was that another kind of, theme that you were kind of trying to put in there, or was that just another one of those things that came after and you were like, "Oh, yeah, no, totally."
A little bit of both
Mhm,
because I have spent most of my professional life being a contractor, working independently at home outside of a kind of collective work or office setting. So I couldn't be certain that everybody was indeed feeling the same way about this expectation to perform. But my thought was at least that, in the metaphor of the film, this athlete frog would be like, well, this skill I have made it possible for me to see what's happening, but do nothing about it. And and I didn't want like a hero frog that tells everybody to get out of the way. If you they just stand there shocked, and then they sit right back down. And I really connected with many people who had that exact reaction, saying like, "This is," especially I remember this one comment on YouTube that was something to the effect of, "I don't know if this was meant to communicate what it's like to be a teen or 20 or 30 something trying to being expected to just put your head down and perform," but it really spoke to me in that way. So it's again one of the cool things about filmmaking is that there is this emergent meaning. And for anybody who's interested in making films, I'd highly recommend not starting with um, what kind of thematic message like climate change do I want to communicate, but just commit to a tiny kind of dumb structure like frogs at Olympics or whatever. So that is the only constant, and you can probe this constant for avenues for meaning instead of, because if you work backwards, you'll get caught up in what you ought to say or how you ought to say it, and so many organic meanings just kind of flowed from this tiny premise.
Totally.
And I was never told to write that way. So, but I think that's how I'll continue to go in the future.
Wow,
Um,
I love that. I just wrote that down. I was like, "Wow, that is a great piece of advice, a great nugget." So that's awesome. But yeah, speaking of filmmaking, just kind of in general, what led you to become a filmmaker and to where you are at this point, and where did your interest initially kind of spark?
well, I've always been, a lot of artists will tell you this, as soon as I could pick up a crayon, I was
Yeah.
drawing. Um, and I had an interest in comics for quite a while. When I was a kid, I'd have this nasty cardboard box full of different kinds of colored paper for this, and drawing the same comic on it in a pile. Um, and I didn't think I would ever be an animator because I thought that's just too hard. But I should have noticed that I kept breaking our my sisters and I kept they got mad at me. I kept breaking our VHS tapes because I wanted to watch The Lion King frame by frame for some for some unrelated
It's a case
reason.
study.
I should have put that together. um, it's like, whoa, this one frame, they're so stretchy. What, they're off model. What's going on? So I wanted to go to art school. Growing up in Colorado, there weren't a lot of great opportunities. There might have been good programs there, but I knew a huge part of going to art school was making relevant connections with people who know some things about some stuff in the industry. So I made my way over to Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland, and I initially wanted to pursue illustration, but they require that you dabble in a couple things your first year, and then I just fell into animation. Um, it's such a cool medium. Like you are, uh, it's always, no matter how good you get at it, it's always a little bit of a surprise what the final product is really going to be. And as you build each frame and modify the movement, you start to finally see this thing come together. Whereas often I started as a painter. If you're painting and you have like a plan, very often the painting will go through an ugly stage where you don't know what's going on, a middle stage where you do know what's going on, and a final stage where you've known what's going on for a long time and you just want to get it done.
Totally. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Wow. Um, I love that comparison between the 2, and I also love how you said, like, animation seems intimidating because that's the first thing that I think of when I think of animated films. It's like, how do you have the patience and the time and the vision? Like, there's so much stuff that goes into that. So what was that kind of learning curve like for you once you entered into art school and everything and started working with it?
Yeah, definitely. The learning curve wasn't as steep as I would have thought, and I'm so shout out to PNCA. I really loved how our program was unlike. maybe some more famous art school programs like Cal Arts, where, from what I understand, there's a like very rigorous 4-year um, curriculum where you're expected to like very keenly learn very specific industry techniques of just how to make things move. And we were just kind of given kind of the basics of how to make things move, and then play with them and develop our own personal voice. And I
Mhm.
remember everyone in my graduating class had an incredibly distinct, um, just personal style that they could carry with them forever. And we were kind of just taught how to do, how to just, how to barely just put an entire film together ourselves. I made two, no, three. Gosh, I made three films, all by myself, just while in school. And this was thousands of drawings, coloring it all
Oh
yourself.
my gosh.
Once you get the basic skills down, it's mostly a matter of like discipline and organization. Like, how can I utilize my energy to finish this thing without getting discouraged or giving up? And it's usually a matter of staying organized. And
Mm.
in my case, I keep I should really stop doing this. I need to work with people more. But when I make films all by myself, um, I tend to try to focus on just scenes that I'm excited to work on that day, and try to like lean into my own excitement as a well of energy. Because sometimes just doing things linearly that would in a way that would make sense is just too exhausting. And also, here's another thing: as you work on a film, uh, the first shot you work on will probably not be as good as the last one. So you'll like improve your skill, especially on the specific needs of that film as you work on it. So you want to minimize shots you would redo because you've gotten better. So doing the less important shots first is often a good strategy.
Yes, absolutely. Man, filled with all the good tidbits today. It's awesome, Beryl. Well, kind of on the same vein of like intimidating to be like an artist and stuff like that. It seems like now it might even be more intimidating than ever for any independent artist to kind of try to make a film, and with all of the different challenges that is posing with different technologies. But you've worked with like a lot of different clients, and so I'm just curious if you have any kind of insight into that or advice for young animators or filmmakers who might be watching.
Yeah, advice on how to get started, or uh,
Yeah, kind of just leaning into that, getting started, maybe overcoming what we might see as like different challenges now, like with AI upcoming and
yeah, definitely. Well, to talk about AI specifically, it definitely won't replace. I think, like, actually, I'll pull this in twofold. AI will not replace human judgment or taste. And in fact, since it's drawing upon a limited library and creating a black box that we can't interrogate, and if you ask this machine why it came up with the decisions it did, it couldn't tell you.
Mhm.
Um, and I fear that if we rely on this thing too much, that our culture is going to be so like recursive and cyclical and self-referential in a way that we can't unpack, that it will kind of stifle our ability to move forward. But that will be the niche that humans will continue to occupy. So
Wow, yeah.
also in terms of getting better at the uh, techniques itself, use your taste to guide you. You might not have the skills, but you know what looks good to you, and you know what doesn't, and just lean into your own judgment and just develop that first, and then with practice, the skill will follow.
Yeah. Wow,
And this
great.
is really quick, and also art is still absolutely worth doing. We don't have to give up the humanities to the robots. Take heart. And there are many people who are not satisfied with the direction things are going. You're not alone in feeling anxious about it. But humans are going to still human. We're going to keep doing what we do. So keep going.
Wow, I love it. Mic drop. That was amazing. Such a beautiful, succinct answer. Well, Beryl, if you have any other things you'd like to add about Record Highs or any upcoming work or any last thoughts before we head out today?
Um, I honestly can't think of anything. I guess thanks again for everybody who's seen the film and engaged with this lovely film festival.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for being a part of it, Beryl. We so appreciate your work and your artistry.
Thank you.
So be sure to watch Record Highs. Thank you.